Awesome, look at that.
So our slideshow that was graciously and tenderly put together by Amy Brown, although it is a collection of all of our different pictures, right? Okay. It's just going to keep running, and we will try to stop it at certain points if we can. We're also still waiting for a few pilgrims. Yes, we need maybe one more chair, Amy, and let's get one more chair.
One more chair?
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great. I think that's plenty. Is there anybody else? Oh, Julie's in it.
I'll be right back.
Okay, great. Yeah, take your time. All right, should we start with a prayer? The Lord be with you. Oh, gracious and life-giving God, you lead us on one adventure after another. Thank you for the gift of this experience of the pilgrimage, for the search for the feminine divine, for this extraordinary group of women, for the beautiful Isle of Iona, for the sheep, for the meadows, for the people, for the fun we had, and for our ability to share it with our larger church family. Bless all of us in this confusing time. Use us as your hands and feet in this world that so desperately needs your love. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, so the way this was structured, you start with a week. Oh, yay! A week on Iona, but everybody had to get to Glasgow by, I guess it was about 2 days before. So many of us met in Glasgow, so that we could all assemble at the Queen Street station, get on the same train. If you want to go to Iona, you got to be into conveyances, because you start on the train. Well, first you got to get to Scotland. But then you start on the train, 3-hour train ride to Oban, which is a beautiful seaside town and has a fantastic whiskey distillery and is on the Scotch tour, for those of you who are into Scotch. So we spent the night in Oban, and then the next day we took an hour-long plus ferry to the Isle of Mull, which is actually a very large island. And then we took a 45-minute bus ride across the Isle of Mull. And then you get about a 15-minute, not even, a 10-minute ferry to Iona. The irony is that looks like you could swim to Iona from Mull, but the tides are so strange and iffy and weird that is often the piece that can't happen. So you always go to Iona wondering if you will actually get there. But we did get there, and honestly, the only time we had rain, which is nothing short of miraculous, was the last day we were leaving, the big travel day, and then as we were arriving. And then, you cannot believe it. You will see lots of sun in pictures, because we took so many crafts and activities to do indoors because we wanted to be prepared. We didn't do half of what we were planning to do. So you can see one gorgeous picture after another. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But really what I want to do is not hear from me. I want you to hear from our pilgrims. So I'm going to ask some questions, and we're going to pass the microphone back and forth. The first thing that I want to ask everybody, and you don't have to answer, but please, if you would like to say something, we'd really love to hear from you. What surprised you about this trip? Is that okay? I didn't give you any time to think about it.
So if you hand me the microphone, I guess that means I have to answer. So what surprised
surprised me about this trip was the sheer beauty of Iona. I am Scottish by heritage, and I was prepared for beauty, but Iona is a place apart, kind of like Shrinemont. It is truly unique, and it is truly stunning, and it's not just on the visual level. What you're looking at are pictures of Iona. This is, right now, we're looking at the nunnery, a 12th century nunnery, and as you can see, it's beautiful, but the beauty's more than the scenery. Right? The beauty in Iona goes to its soul. It is a place that has had an abbey on it for over 1,500 years now, a nunnery since the 1200s. Its roots in spirituality are deep. The population, even if they are not precisely church-going, their lives are built around the spirituality of Iona. And so the beauty is far more than the pictures themselves convey. It touches the soul, it touches the heart, and that I'm not sure I was prepared for.
Pass it around. So as I say, you don't have to, somebody can raise a hand, but okay, go.
Hello, everybody.
Hold it really close to your mouth.
Really close.
That's it.
There we go. First of all, I was excited to go on this trip because my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was Scottish, and my middle name is actually Iona, which always was kind of a difficult name to have, especially in junior high school. But it was fun to go to a place that was Iona, right? I especially liked where we stayed, the bishop's house. That was amazing. And the rooms were clean, the rooms were just right. We all had our own room. We had a great bed. The food was excellent, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they were just a really, really good group of people. So I would suggest you all go back.
Look, there it is.
There's the icon.
There's Anne's Lambs. Exactly. Who did that? That was so good. Really good. Yeah.
Just quickly, I would like to add, I was very surprised by the power of place.
Yeah.
That Iona is considered a thin place, meaning it is a place where it's easier to get in touch with spirituality, a thinner veil. Also, because we were so remote, it invites you to be quiet with yourself and to reflect. So it was a lovely place to go on the boat.
Hi everyone. I was
Hold it closer.
I was surprised. Well, maybe not surprised, but I was certainly just overcome with how happy the people are on this island. Tiny little island, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it was the people just could not have been happier. I mean, lovelier. It was wonderful.
What Cheryl said about the size, I was surprised at how tiny Iona was. I'd heard about Iona as being a place that a pilgrimage that had happened for centuries and was an important religious center. And I assumed that it was a place of a certain size. The whole town has just a few streets, and you can walk around, and they get a lot of pilgrims during the good weather, but there are only about a few hundred people on the island itself. So this tiny little island, right on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, became such an important part of our religious history.
What surprised me was the effect that the place had on me. I had heard so much about the thin places. I was expecting this transcendental experience, and instead I experienced, and I told John and Ann this before, a deep, deep sense of gravity. And sort of ancientness. And I dreamed about the past. I was flooded with images from the past, and I did not expect that at all. I am not a past-oriented person, and I didn't expect this sense of deep gravity and the past to sort of overtake me.
I would say that I was also surprised by the holiness of so many of the spaces that we were in the nunnery. There were times when I could really feel the 300 years of 10th, 11th, 12th century women who had inhabited that space in my own way, in whatever way that might be. But I was also really struck by the worship community of Iona, and I chose to attend 3 services, which was about all I could fit in, basically. But I would have gone to more if I had been able to. And their worship is very communal. It's very inviting. They have their own liturgy that really reflects inclusion, and it reflects both. I think one of the concepts that we talked about is feeling God as transcendent from above and feeling God as immanent from within. And in those services, I really felt God within and found it to be so welcoming, in fact, that I have continued on occasion to look at their YouTube channel, and they don't actually have images of the worship, but they do record the worship and you can hear it. So if anyone is interested, you can go to YouTube and look up the Iona Abbey, and they will have some worship experiences that you could listen to. It was really transformative for me.
I was surprised that over the course of a week there that we started each day with morning Eucharist, and then we ended each day with prayer again, with compline, and then we threw in some special services that were done in the Abbey. There was one that they offered a couple of evenings a week at 9 o'clock at night. It was a healing service, and a small group of us decided to go up there and see how that was going to go. And I was totally surprised by that activity too. But totally surprised that almost the whole Abbey was filled with people in the town, and it was such a beautiful service, not long, but just very touching, and everybody had their own time to pray for healing in their own way, in their own time. And it was just really so special. I really loved it.
What they said. Really, it was a transformative experience. I think 15 fairly type A women together in one place for 7 or 8 days, and it was quite incredible to spend that kind of time together. We live in this busy Northern Virginia time where we might run in here on Sunday, or occasionally you might see somebody on a Zoom class, but to really spend that special time together, all of us, eating porridge every morning for breakfast, wishing we could have an egg, and I don't consider myself to be particularly a contemplative person, contemplative, but I've started doing centering prayer since we left, and I find, again, it's a way to take myself back to Iona and use the words that we used there. It was an incredible experience, and I hope to go back. My sister-in-law is here today. She went 9 years ago, and we've decided we're going to try to go back together at some time. So anyway, if you have the opportunity, please jump on it.
So just a few things to fill in. So what drew Iona, how we are aware of Iona, is that Saint Columba, arrived on the island of Iona in 635 or something like that. Was it
563.
563. Oh, I always get my numbers wrong. Anyway, and he was a monk that came from Ireland, and he started an abbey there. And one of the things that is quite extraordinary, I'm a big fan of pilgrimage, and I go to lots of different holy sites. But unlike the way Christianity was introduced, because there's always people there first, right? They already have their own spiritual traditions, their own spirituality. But what Columba did that was very different than in either the Holy Land or Mexico, or he realized that the people, the Druids, the Celts that were already there, had everything they needed. They just hadn't met Jesus yet. So the way he introduced Jesus was in a very gentle way, unlike the way Jesus was introduced through force and coercion and violence in many other places. And you can feel it palpably, like it's a very different vibe. Plus, because the spirituality, the Celtic spirituality was already so alive, and it was pretty far away from Rome, Rome couldn't tamp it down quite the way that it shut down a lot of other sort of non-orthodox religious expression. So it was very alive. And one thing I do want to tell you, and if it comes up again, I'll point it out. But one of the traditions, so St. Bridget is a patron saint of Iona, and she's quite extraordinary because not only did she really live, but she became a kind of mythological shapeshifter, so they actually think of her as the midwife to when Christ was born. Now, she lived way after that, but this is part of how you can connect magical thinking with reality. It's really quite extraordinary. Anyway, the highest point in Iona is called Dun-Ii, and a group of us walked up there one morning before sunrise because legend has it that if you splash water on your face from St. Bridget's well, which is on the top, you will have eternal youth. So you might notice that some of us look a whole lot better after the trip than we did. So there's lots of fun stuff around that. There's just a couple things I want to share with you about the geology of the place. So first of all, it seems very odd, but Iona is on the Gulf Stream, right? So the water, right, goes down the Atlantic, our east coast, and then scoops up and comes along the west coast of Scotland. So that's why you see pictures of the water that look like sparkling aquamarine, like you see in the islands. Oh look, there's a rainbow, so lovely. So there's that. The other thing is that some of the rocks that one can find only on the island of Iona are, well, help me with numbers again. How old were those?
280 million.
280 million years old. So, of course, we did a lot of looking at rocks. And I believe all of our bags were heavier coming back because we all brought rocks home. So that's part of the fun. Okay, next question for our pilgrims. So the theme of the pilgrimage was sort of in search of the feminine divine. So I'd like to, again, ask everybody, again, nobody has to say anything. There's my Ugg slippers while I'm celebrating the Eucharist. How has your understanding of the feminine divine deepened or changed as a result of the experience?
So I would say a connection between concepts of from the Gospel of Mary, which centers Christ in our lives in a little bit different way and speaks to the internal Christ, that God is within all of us. And in Iona and in Celtic spirituality, God is in everything. God is in the ferns you see growing on the inside of the abbey here. God is in the tree outside this window. God is in each of us. God is in the flowers that moms may be given today. God is everywhere. And to me, that is also part of the interiorness of the feminine divine. God is in us, and we fall into God. God is around us and surrounds us just like when we were in the womb, and just like we are every day. So that is part of how I connected those two things.
I have
highly of just the two words, feminine and divine. And it's always helped me, especially when I was younger, as a Lord, when we went to Sunday school, and they talked so much about the Lord being a man, or that we figured here's a man. But in my little frame of mind, I was thinking, well, I've got the feminine divine in my mind. So it was really nice to study it with everybody and to see, to get it more into the real thing, what she's really doing or what she really was doing. So I say we should all read about her.
I ended up going on this pilgrimage in large measure because I was involved with the Women's Bible Study. And I joined the Women's Bible Study because of the study of Mary Magdalene, which was led by Amy Brown. And I found, frankly, that discussion and process spiritually transformative to me because it allowed me to reframe institutional religion in a way that the parts that didn't always feel true to me made sense to me when I looked at it through a different lens. And I welcomed our opportunity on Iona as part of the pilgrimage to use that as a thematic link, which had a focus or a filter so that we could look at all of these experiences with a consciousness of the feminine divine. And if you have not studied the Gospel of Mary, I would encourage everyone to do so. I think it can deepen your faith and your appreciation for the experience we have here, as well as the possibility of a pilgrimage to a special place like Iona.
Can I just make one clarification on the issue? So the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is not part of our canon. It's not part of the Bible that we know. There were a number of other Gospels, so testimonies that were written about Jesus, that were considered heretical at a certain point in the forming of the church. And fortunately, some rebel monks saved copies of them, put them, well, in various places to save them, to preserve them, but they were often like put in a jar that was sealed and stuck in a cave that we discovered in 1945. Or the Essenes, who was this sort of desert sect, they too put scrolls in jars that were found much later. And now we have the opportunity to see, read, not every week, a lot of them are half there or something, but it's a very different perspective than we get from our Bible. And so the Women's Bible Study took that on.
So the study of the feminine divine that we did on Iona was really my first introduction to the Gospel of Mary. And I have to say that I was just very intrigued. Our study, the work that we did, preparation was wonderful. That kind of led the pilgrimage for us. Just intrigued me to learn more. And again, very, very, very fascinating stuff.
The feminine divine was something that, I guess, 20, 30 years ago first hit my consciousness, and suddenly realized that I didn't have to be a man with a beard, that there was a whole other sense of what divine meant. And what this trip did, I have to say out loud, is some members of this group put together a booklet that we used, and it included passages and references and information about the feminine divine from a whole number of different perspectives. And that really helped us together to discuss and to think about how we had been raised and how we viewed Christianity over time and what it meant now. But where on the island this particularly struck me is when we walked around what had been the nunnery. And some of the slides that you saw were the photos of the nunnery. And to think that these women lived together in this group and intimately, and At first you think, oh, what a terrible thing, this tiny island, there's nothing there, and a bunch of women living together with nothing else. Compared to the life they would have had elsewhere, this was a really blessed life.
Yes.
And you really got a sense of them as you were walking around these ruins of what that life, you know, the thin place, what it must have been for them to live on this island. And so for us to be able to come back and walk those steps and be there was very, very meaningful and touching.
For me, the understanding of the feminine divine can't be separated from Celtic Christianity. And the reason I say that is because for me now to think of the feminine divine is to think us all living in an atmosphere of abundance and enough rather than an atmosphere of sin and falling short and scarcity. And to me, that points, Celtic spirituality, which recognizes the divine in everything, recognizes the perfection of each thing in its identity, in its thisness. A flower is perfect in its flowerness, if you will. So for me, it's a way of thinking of things as just as they should be, perfect in themselves, not wanting, not striving for something different.
Oh, there's Bridget as well. This is us at the top. Don't we look good?
So, yeah, thanks, Brittany. So, for me, the journey to connect with what I call Spirit Sophia, or who I call Spirit Sophia, has been emerging over the last several years and has been very powerful. And I would echo what all these women said, and what I would say is being in that place with a group of women and hearing their experience of the divine was also very powerful and moving and transforming. And then the only other thing that I would say is I really had a sense as I was preparing for this of the fact that women have always been and will always be 50% of the population, and yet our voices have been consistently suppressed from historical record and positions of power. And so for me, it was important to lift up the voices that we do have, and from Eve to Miriam to the Marys, to the women of Acts who helped to build the church but are often unnamed, and then of course through some of the saints, Claire and Hildegard von Bingen. You know, it was just very powerful to hear and appreciate their voices, and then to know that they represented millions of others.
Amy, that was phenomenal. I can't top that.
It's not about topic.
Oh, Kathy, thank you for not making me the only one. Honestly, as a graduate of Women's College, I've always been very proud of being a woman and cognizant of the things that women can do, and always was raised to believe that women can do anything. And this was just a confirmation of that. When you think back to St. Bridget and all the other women from the early days, like you said, the days of Acts and so forth, and so much of that has been shut down.
Yep.
And so this was just a marvelous opening up.
You want to say anything?
So, and as long as we have it here, this is kind of at least it's a picture that's not moving. So, this is kind of what you see as you arrive on the ferry. The ferry sort of wharf is right here. It's not really a wharf, it's just a thing. In fact, you have to kind of time getting off the ferry because the waves are rushing up and the guys are like, go! You know, and so you go running out and then you have to make sure that you don't get your feet wet. Anyway, this is the Abbey. They're doing some renovation on it. So that's the Abbey that was rebuilt in 1945 by George MacLeod. And he came and he is the one that created the desire to rebuild the Abbey and to form an intentional community called the Iona community. So this is where we stayed. This is called Bishop's House, right here. And it is the Scottish Episcopal Church / chapel, really, on the island. And so when you stay at Bishop's House, you have to take a priest with you because they have public services, Eucharist, every morning. So the first time I went, I was the Episcopal priest that another group had to take with them to do the services. And then I was like, oh man, do I have to come back here? So that was that. Anyway, okay, next, and maybe last question. So what would you, so I want to also name about pilgrimage unto itself. It is not a tour, right? It's not a, we like to say that when you're on a tour, you move through the land. When you're on a pilgrimage, the land moves through you. So you can hear the effect of the place on everybody. It's truly extraordinary. And so I guess what I want to say is what, and you guys can kind of take this however you want to do it. You know, what would you tell somebody who's going? That's one thing. And how has the pilgrimage changed you, right? So nobody from any pilgrimage, and of course a pilgrimage could be walking the labyrinth, right? So the idea is that you are different as a result of the pilgrimage. You are changed, you are transformed. So you can take this however you want. What would you tell people who are going, and it can be anything from, you know, very practical, and or how has this experience changed you? Started this at great.
I think going without expectation is the best way to do it. And to just be open. I didn't do too much research about Iona. I didn't do too much reading about anything. I just wanted to go and let it envelop me. And that's, I would give that recommendation for other pilgrimage. But that's what it did. It just took me in.
I would say be realistic about the fact that this is a pilgrimage, and as in, too, it's not a vacation. So you do have to go with, your preparation is really about opening your mind and your heart to the experience. Be willing to get a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, and go, gee, you know, this is not my style of things, or I'm a little anxious about what we're going to do. And, but more often than not, if you just go with the flow of the group because it gives you security, you know you're going to be fine, and you end up really having some great opportunities for personal growth in faith and in relationship. These women are great. Yeah. And we had a great time together. And that's also a big part of what a pilgrimage is to be able to patiently learn from each other and appreciate what everyone brings to the event that we're going on, and really listening to each other very carefully and loving each other.
I don't know if I have anything to say after that.
Okay, I do have one thing that I wanted to mention. There was a wall in the Abbey, not in the sanctuary, but outside, that had several quotes. And one that really stuck out for me was in Gaelic, and it essentially meant, if you come to Iona once, you will come 3 times. And at first I thought, hey, I'm gonna be back. But then, and I hope I will. But I also began to think of it as the preparation, the experience, and the memories, which would be true for any pilgrim and pilgrimage experience. And I was a part of the planning group, and Anne graciously, early on, gave us a number of references that I think I would have learned from richly had I not taken the pilgrimage. But being on the pilgrimage created, it just vastly expanded the knowledge and the experience of it, and as everyone has mentioned, just being together. And I certainly hope that I can continue to take that experience with me, that Iona somehow is now in my bones. And I think as Holy Comforter continues in its pilgrim era, that we do have those experiences available to all, that we can walk the labyrinth together, or walk the property together, or go to places like Harriet Tubman's birthplace, and go to South Africa and
South Africa in November,
Right.
and the Camino in May.
Right,
The Camino.
and that those will be experiences that we can essentially all have together, whether we go on them or not, through information like this, and just sharing what we learn.
I would say to anyone who wants to go on a pilgrimage, I would echo everyone, don't have expectations, and I thought I didn't, and I actually did, so there's but don't be surprised if when you let your mind not be focused on day-to-day things, surprising things happen. And sometimes even you will get an intention floating up as you're in the pilgrimage. And then you can take that and make it an intentional community for a week for you.
Listening to everybody, it's hard to top what not top, but just to add anything to that. I would say, and this has been mentioned before, it is both a communal experience, and you feel that you are part of a group. You are not just an individual, and yet you have the opportunity on your own, alone, those of us who are introverts, to spend time by yourself and to commune with God and nature, or in these wonderful buildings, and so on. One of the things I learned about, and Anne just mentioned it, was the Iona community. I had never heard of it before. I brought back a pamphlet because I'm that kind of person. And they're all over the world. And there's a community that prays together, that is working for justice around the world. And I had no idea this little island in Scotland will have this worldwide network. And so feeling like you're part of that network, part of a much larger world. Here in our church and throughout the world, we are connected. And a pilgrimage does make you feel part of something through history and through space, being God's people.
So this was my second pilgrimage with Holy Comforter.
Hold close.
I went to Israel in 2023, and I just have to say that it's an experience like none other. It's hard to describe. It really is. But I thoroughly enjoyed the community with this group of 14 plus me, women, and getting to know some of them better, and just hearing their thoughts and their insights on things. And I tell you what, it's a very brilliant group of women, and I just enjoyed the experience so very much. To reiterate, I would say, in terms of if you were to go on a pilgrimage, not having expectations is a really good thing, and just let it be and see what happens.
I have heard all these warnings to not have expectations, but I did not listen, and I had expectations. And I still do, and that is, it was not easy, it was uncomfortable, but it was real to be able to get in touch with a more spiritual part of myself while in Iona, while being free of the distractions of every day and a little truer to place and spiritual opportunity. And what I kind of regret, I want is to hold on to that piece. And I came back to Northern Virginia and immediately I am the same person I was before I left. Due to lots of life circumstances, I don't blame myself, but I regret that I cannot hold on to a daily pilgrimage where my life is a pilgrimage, and some of the things that I valued about that experience, I would like to be able to incorporate into my personality and my daily journey through life. So to the degree a pilgrimage is an opportunity to remind us of what we value and how we want to live, my ongoing goal would be to figure out a way to do more of that every day.
I have enjoyed pilgrims since I was 4 years old. And so when I went to, on this trip, and we talked a lot about pilgrims and whatnot, I really listened a lot, and I sort of thought to myself, and even in my mind, I created what they looked like, what they were doing and whatnot. So it was just wonderful to be on a pilgrimage, and I will go back again.
So I echo everything everybody said, but I will add 2 things. So Anne suggested before we go that we pack light. Because we might want to bring things back.
Rocks.
So, but she meant that not only in the sense of the clothes you bring, but in your expectations and in a spiritual capacity. And so you'll see somewhere in this, at the very end, you'll see me with a backpack standing on a train station. So I included that, not because I love that image of me, in fact I don't. But what I did is I literally packed light, and I forced myself to pack light. And I only took this fairly small backpack of clothing and other things. And I encourage anybody going on a pilgrimage to do that and to force yourself to do that, because it also becomes part of the giving up the stuff and the expectations and the needs to get something specific out of it. So for me, that was really a huge part of the preparation. And then the thing I took away from it was I reconnected. I grew up in California, and I was a crazy avid backpacker. You could not find me in the summer in my hometown of Davis, California, because I was off in the wilderness somewhere. I would come home occasionally to take a shower and wash my clothes, and I would leave again. And it was amazing, and I loved it, and it was my joy. And in Iona, I reconnected with that. That hike to Duni, we were coming back down, we couldn't find the trail, and all of a sudden I could. And I reconnected with that part of my past that could find trails in the middle of the wilderness. And it was, when I got off that train, I got off before everybody else. I left a couple stops before Glasgow, in a place called Helensburgh. And it is at the nexus of a whole bunch of trails. Scotland has an amazing trail system. And I hiked. And I had the most joyous time hiking. So my pilgrimage continued after the pilgrimage. And so that's the thing I really took away, was that pilgrimage continues after the pilgrimage. And also the pilgrimage could be going for a hike. It doesn't need to be going to Scotland. And so it was a joy, and I'm so grateful to all of you and you for this opportunity.
So just last thoughts. The very last thing that we did as a group was to do a little ritual in the oldest building, which was an open-air chapel, stone chapel, that's right near the Abbey. So remember, the Abbey's rebuilt, but this has been there since 11th century or something like that. And it's where Many of the kings that would come to be buried at Iona, that would, would be like a place to stop. Anyway, we went in there together and we sang. The acoustics were amazing. And the invitation was that we would each light a candle to the person we were before we got to Iona. So everybody sort of thought about that and then got up. And so we created this little, looked like a birthday cake in a way, of candles. And then we were invited to light a candle to the person we're becoming, or that we want to be, and that the clarity that came to us. And it was an incredibly moving experience. I don't know for everybody else, but anyway, just knocked my socks off. And I hope out of this forum today that you all realize that you have the ability to keep reinventing who you are and keep listening for who God is calling you to be, and you don't have to go to Iona to do it. That's it. Thank you, girls. Awesome. Any questions? Any questions that anybody has? Yes, Barney.
What is the significance of that red ribbon or the red?
Okay, great question. I wasn't sure if I should get into it or not. And please feel free to leave if you need. It's 12 o'clock. So we did this study of Mary Magdalene. Many of us are very excited about her as a character and how she's been pictured through history. And on New Year's Day of this year, so we're well into the planning of this trip to Iona, a friend of mine who doesn't identify as a Christian sent around a painting of Mary Magdalene, depicted, I believe, was painted in the 17th century, and she was credited with being the undoer of knots. So in the picture, Mary Magdalene, this very knotted ribbon is coming up into her hands, and as it passes through her hands, she undoes the knots. And this is based on a story of a couple that came to a priest, and they were having troubles in their marriage, and he suggested they pray to Mary Magdalene, and their troubles were unknotted. So somebody made a painting of this. Well, it was, I believe, Winifred's brilliant idea that we take this unending piece of red yarn and try to, first of all, get tangled up in it, and then try to untangle it. We were never actually able to untangle it fully. We gave up because it was so long. But those are the pictures, and we just had a whole bunch of fun tying ourselves up in it. That is what that was about. Any other questions before we let you go? Yes, Zara.
Did you manage to go to Fingal's Cave?
Fingal's Cave we did not go to, unfortunately. You can never, there's always stuff that you can't do it all. But next time. Yeah. Anything else? We just did it. So this was in very end of March, and it became April while we were there. Yes. Anything else? I thought I saw a hand. Okay. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks.
Thanks. We got to have 2 Mother's Day because we had Mother's Day. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, girls. Perfect.
Well, it's in the